There's good and evil, and all humans on earth are actually in a proxy war between angels and demons. The universe is very populated with spiritual beings. It has all different types. There's good ones and bad ones. And for the most part, the records are very consistent in that we see demonic and evil-looking beings like reptilians, greys, that kind of thing. That would all be on the negative side. And then on the positive side, we see angelic human ETs that are showing up in all these ancient cultures. And we try to create spiritual teachings based on what they're telling us, and then we end up playing my God is better than your God. That's not what they wanted. The ageless wisdom is a thread that weaves through all these different ancient teachings, and they all pretty much tell you you need to be more loving, you need to be kind, you need to be loving to other people. They've been trying to give us the same message over and over again, these positive human ETs, but then we catechize it. We worship the writing. We worship the words. We say, this is the word of God. And it has to be this way. But then there's this religion, there's that religion, there's that religion, there's that religion. If the original beings that created all this stuff got together, they'd probably agree on everything. And then we find out, no, it was actually, there was a cruel psychopathic fat man, and he did this thing, and he messed it all up, and he added his stuff in there, and then this other guy did this, and oh, that's how it turned out to be crazy. And then everybody believed what these psychopathic fat guys said, and not the original source, because the original source got rewritten, but then we worshipped the rewrite. And so the ageless wisdom says there's a source of consciousness inside of you. There is a Christ consciousness within you that has absolute truth, and you have to learn how to listen to that intuitive voice. You have to go into meditative stillness, and the first thing that will get in the way of your meditation is fear. All these things that concern you. And you reach a point where you just breathe through it, and you learn to look beyond that fear. So the reality that I'm presenting you is essentially a graduate level course. This is like the PhD of understanding what's really going on in the world once you've been able to solve large amounts of the puzzle. We can't solve the entire puzzle, but we can get it 95%. We think we got a pretty good look at what this really is. And if you haven't heard this before, it's totally mind-blowing. And then there's all this evidence that actually supports that viewpoint. So let's now look at last week's data, and I'll show you some of what I was talking about. My last show was called Awaken Now, and the purpose of the show, sorry, I got to get my nose clean. It's boogers, just boogers. But you got to do it once in a while. So the show Awaken Now was talking about this inner Christ consciousness that we all have, and there was a psychic reading that I produced, which again, from 96 to 2000, I was using remote viewing protocols. I pulled in what appears to be an angelic voice. It eventually said it was Archangel Michael in the late 1990s, and it is fighting for humanity's survival against a force that it considers to be pure evil. So we have angelic ETs that project as humans out of an energetic body. We heard from the highest level Area 51 inside info I've gotten has consistently said that these energy beings live inside the planet Venus. Regardless of what you were told about Venus before, some positive beings live in Venus, okay? And they can project into a human body, but they don't need one. And they're very, very advanced. And this is what Valiant Thor was. He projected out of energy into a human body, and he co-authored in the 1950s a plan on how to defeat this worldwide Babylonian evil, a plan that was worked with the U.S. military intelligence community. And Kennedy was trying to work the plan. Reagan was trying to work the plan. Iran-Contra was an example. And so now we're seeing the fulfillment of this. It's a stealth state capture operation, but what they're trying to do is actually recapture positive, freedom-loving governance. And they're trying to expose, in this case, not the guy who's going to save your rainforest, but the people who want to actually hurt and destroy you. But they'll smile and they'll lie to you the whole time and make you think that they're on your side. And then when the betrayal comes, just like when you find that text in your phone, you're like, it's very shocking. So, this show that I did called Awaken Now was talking, there was a main reading that I did in the 1999, it was in 1999, talking about the grief that we were all going to go through, speaking as that inner Christ self. This is one of the only times my readings ever did this, where it verbalized the Christ consciousness itself. And it talks extensively about grief and sorrow. So in the show, these are the slides I had last week, I told you that we were most likely going to see a huge landslide. This is one of my slides. Now, a lot of people weren't expecting that. I was. Everything that happened is not only what I was expecting, it worked better than I was expecting. Okay? We can expect very high drama and pushback. And what I didn't really, this is where I was wrong, is I said it might drag on for weeks before the alliance moves. Okay, so what does that mean? It meant that I expected, as probably most of us did, that this was all going to be disputed, that it was going to be very close, or that it would be modified to be that way. I knew in reality it wasn't. But the fear that everybody had was, no matter how well they do, something's going to go wrong and we're all going to be tied up in this for weeks and they're going to be like, throwing everything they got at this guy in the meantime. That's not what happened. It actually was an amazing twist from what everybody thought was going to occur. And surprises don't usually happen on stuff as big as this, right? This was a big surprise. Not what we would have expected. So very few people expected to see such an unobstructed, huge movement. And so bear in mind that, if you want to look at all these areas of the darker color as being people who are completely brainwashed and that they just don't think like you and they're all crazy and they're all about ready to try to do horrible things, then you don't really see what's going on here. This is a narrative war. This is a war of information of what facts do you think are facts and what information do you think is fake. And so the two sides here have completely different narratives, and people are going to have to learn how to respect the other narrative, because the only way you can learn about it, the only way you can protect yourself against it, is to go in there and do your own research. Don't be told what to think, but do your own research. So then this is another really